Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Hawkins from the University of North Texas Libraries. I'd like to welcome you to our session, From Usage Reporting to OA Analytics. This is listed in the program as a hybrid session because our colleague Christina Drummond is in person in Charleston. She is probably arriving in the room right about now, has been running from session to session today. We had in mind that she would be able to help moderate the Q&A from any in-person attendees, so that's why it is listed as hybrid. However, we didn't realize at the time that she'd end up being scheduled to present in another panel directly after this one, which means she will need to get over to get set up for that session as well. So anyone in person should feel free to participate in the online chat through the platform, the Pathable platform that all of our online attendees are using as well. So I'm here with a couple of colleagues, Rebecca Welzenbach and Niels Stern, who we are each going to present some aspects on this topic. And we have all been involved in various ways with a 2-year project called Developing a Pilot Data Trust for Open Access eBook Usage that is generously funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. And instead of merely providing a project report during today's session, we aim to facilitate a discussion about trends in the use of usage data in general, not just usage data relating to OA ebooks, which has been the specific focus of our project here. So first, I want to take a few minutes to provide some context about this project itself that we have been involved in, so you can kind of understand a little better where we've come from here. Oops. So from its origins at the 2015 Triangle Scholarly Communications Institute, the OA ebook usage, or OA EBU, data trust effort has grown into an international coalition aiming to develop and pilot a data trust for usage data on OA scholarly ebooks. By a data trust, we mean a data exchange platform that is governed by stakeholders in ebook publishing and open to participation by any organization meeting criteria for membership. You could also call this a data collaborative. The first phase of our research, funded by the Mellon Foundation during 2019 and 2020, led to a white paper. It's shown there on the left, the cover image and the DOI in the lower left. Since 2020, we have been in the second phase of our work, during which we are piloting a proof of concept system while documenting the OA ebook usage data ecosystem and modeling technical and governance structures. To date, we have engaged dozens of thought leaders representing the leading organizations and projects working on OA ebook analytics across 5 continents. These range from university presses, commercial and not-for-profit publishers, and innovative scholarly communications efforts. Our team has engaged over 100 stakeholders across 5 continents in its exploration of usage data for OA book data. And our project has contracted with the consulting firm of Clark and Esposito to map the OA ebook data supply chain, identifying both the end users of usage data as well as the usage data generators and stakeholders who process or transfer data on to others during the scholarly communications lifecycle. We developed proof of concept usage data dashboards and data connectors on open infrastructure in order to research the data aggregation, normalization, and benchmarking challenges faced by 4 university presses, 1 OA publishing network, that's OAPEN, and 1 commercial publisher, Springer Nature. The dashboards allow visualizing usage data from across ebook platforms in a single interface. Niels will be talking a bit more about that here. And the project has explored governance and sustainability models used for data collaboratives in other industries in order to gain a greater understanding of the needs data providers have when they want to share their data for a specific use. That is, when they are unable to make the data openly available, whether it's due to business intelligence concerns, privacy legislation, ethical issues, and whatever the case may be here. And we learned that data governance and stewardship are critical to cross-platform data sharing and processing for derivative data use. To foster data transfer and use, we must navigate terms of use, cybersecurity and privacy requirements, and access controls to ensure that data is managed consistent with data provider expectations. In our project, we modeled technical controls while understanding what recommended practices still need to be developed to guide ethical aggregation, benchmarking, and visualization of usage data. Informed by a legal research agenda that summarized relevant data regulation and the emerging European Data Governance Act in particular, a key decision was made to split off all data dashboard and analytics services from the trusted multi-party data exchange function, thereby allowing the data trust to remain neutral among its diverse stakeholders while avoiding service delivery that could disadvantage or harm participating data providers. Business model canvases, an environmental scan, and impact-focused service models were then developed to inform the future phase of the OAEBU data trust and potential unaffiliated usage data dashboarding services. One of the objectives of our current grant-funded research has been to investigate and document the use cases for usage data. These have been shared publicly, along with many other products of our research, to allow others to build upon this work in the future. So I just want to take a little bit of time to talk about that in particular here. Earlier this year, members of our team facilitated stakeholder interviews and virtual design workshops with representatives of libraries, publishers, and publishing platforms and services in order to surface the use cases for usage data and the staff roles that engage with each of these use cases. While we had some assumptions for our project, we wanted to verify them to make sure that our work would address the actual needs in the community. This research identified details on multiple stakeholder value propositions for OAEBU data dashboards or analytics. In the upper right, we circled the area of the diagram showing the shared needs across the three types of organizations. We found a shared system-wide need to simplify usage data curation, aggregation, and management, given the time and costs that individual institutions allocate, excuse me, when, sorry, I need to get back to this slide here, we found a shared system-wide need to simplify usage data curation, aggregation, and management, given the time and cost that individual institutions allocate when they're combining counter-compliant reporting alongside with other usage data dashboards, and when trying to incorporate non-counter-compliant web analytics. The bit.ly link at the bottom of the slide takes you to a report with details on the use cases by stakeholder, each correlated to staff roles in these various types of organizations that have a particular need. So next, my colleague, Rebecca Welzenbach, will show how the University of Michigan Press has leveraged data for dashboards and benchmarking to meet the needs of their stakeholders.
Thank you, Kevin. I will just share my screen here. I will attempt to share the correct screen. Okay, is everyone seeing a slide that says use case, University of Michigan Press? Good. Okay. So my name is Rebecca Welzenbach. I'm a librarian at the University of Michigan. I've worked for years with Michigan Publishing and the University of Michigan Press on all sorts of projects having to do with usage data and impact of our books. And now I'm a librarian in our graduate library supporting faculty and researchers, authors and scholars as they're trying to sort of answer these questions for their own work, regardless of where they're publishing or what sort of output they have. So I'm bringing the perspective of some long history and knowledge of Michigan publishing, but also the point of view of supporting authors and researchers in this space. So what I want to talk about today is a little bit just about the University of Michigan Press, what brings this organization to a project like the Data Trust that Kevin has been talking about, sort of where we've been and where we're hoping to go with that now. So University of Michigan Press, it's part of the University of Michigan Library, publish about 80 books a year. Currently, it's a mix of about 20% open access and the rest not, but there's a real concerted push now to sort of flip that balance in the coming couple of years with the goal of 75% of the front list being open access by 2023. So as we'll see, that drive, that direction that this press is trying to go is going to really shape a lot of the engagement in this project. University of Michigan Press also hosts its own ebook collection on a homegrown platform called Fulcrum. And so we'll look a little bit at that as well. Oh, sorry, this is just the press website. This is an example of one particular book and what it looks like on the Fulcrum platform. This book is called Coronavirus Politics. It's a favorite example of ours to show lately for obvious reasons. It's recent, it's relevant, it's an open access book. You can see the little unlocked green over there. So this is what the book looks like on our own platform. You'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner, we're tracking some information about it here, an altmetric score showing engagement with the work online, who's talking about and linking to this book out on the web, as well as citation information, which is coming from the Dimensions platform. And in this case, this kind of information, of course, it's really valuable for authors who want to know if their book is being talked about and cited, but also really valuable for marketing at the press, as well as editorial at the press, thinking about, should we do another book like this? Is there a call for a follow-up or a new edition? Is it being used in classrooms? Do we need more of this, that kind of thing? How can we reach the right audience for this book? So given this sort of example, oops, clicking on the wrong thing here. This is a screenshot of the sort of analytics that the press has been using for a while now. This is a public page. It's available from the U of M ebook platform website. And this is a report generated from Google Data Studio. And it's built on Google Analytics, basically for the Fulcrum platform that the books live on. So this is all of the books in the ebook collection, about 1,640 books, something like that, around there, about 1,600 books. And this is using not Counter, not any kind of like book-based or publication-based metric system, but simply web analytics, using Google Analytics that have been sort of shaped into reflecting information about who is engaging with books. Where are they? How are they coming here? And so this is the kind of thing that we've been doing for quite some time. It tells us some interesting information. It's helpful, particularly for reflecting the whole platform and sort of which books are most visited, most popular, and how people are finding them. However, this is only reflecting data from the Fulcrum platform, right? Books that are hosted at the U of M press. And that's not the only place our books live. And for many presses that don't host their own books, there aren't any books living on their own platform at all. They're in other places. So for example, here's the same book, Coronavirus Politics, on the Google Books platform, on the OAPEN platform, on Project Muse, and on JSTOR. You get the idea. So by capturing our own web analytics, we're really just getting a small slice of information about who's using this book and how, what they're doing with it. So it's this exact challenge that has brought us to participation in the Open Access eBook Usage Data Trust Project, wanting to get some help and support and to collaborate with other presses who are exactly in the same boat in trying to understand how do we bring this data together and do something useful with it. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to first show a beta version of a dashboard that we again have up on our site now on the Fulcrum site. This is sort of down at the bottom underneath the one I just showed you. This is another Google Data Studio dashboard. And this was developed with the project team that Kevin has been talking to. So pulling together as much data as we could gather about the usage and downloads and engagement with all of our open access ebooks. So it's worth noting here, this project is just open access ebooks. So in this case, 247 titles as opposed to some 1,600. So that's worth noting that there's a slightly different framing there that is distinct from the overall story that our press is telling. There is some information here, bringing together information about where things are and how we can use them and find them and what the engagement with these titles has looked like. This is sort of a temporary holding example. It's a prototype, but what we're really looking forward to is a more robust dashboard on a different platform called Kibana that is not publicly live yet, but it's coming soon. So I want to show you that in a little more detail to give you a sense of what we're getting from that. So this is a prototype dashboard, and this is what we're really looking forward to engaging with further, that brings together all types of ways of framing the information about usage that we have for our open access books. This is just sort of the main overview page, and it summarizes how many titles are being counted, when they were published, just some sort of summary information. And then I just want to point out this menu in the upper right-hand corner, a few things to flag. As I go through these screenshots, these items in this list, overview, book products, countries, etc., are going to be the different views that I'll show you shortly. And then I also just wanted to point out the process of building this dashboard has been this large process of the project team working with our press, but also with 5 other partners to bring together all the different usage data that they had. And some of that has been established through feeds that are populating automatically. So information from JSTOR is coming in that way, from Google Books, from OAPEN. But some of our data has to be added to this dashboard manually. Data from our own Fulcrum platform, from Project Muse, from EBSCO. And in this prototype, this version that you're seeing now, that hasn't happened yet. So these data sources are not represented here. So just a few of the things that you can see in this space. Subject codes. Right now you're getting sort of codes here, but this will be mapped to the actual names of these subject heads. So using the bicep subjects from our Onyx feed, we can get a sense of the breakdown of what types of books we're publishing. Downloads sort of brought together from all the different sources that they're coming from, but still broken out by source. Particularly because JSTOR, as many of you may know who wrestle with this challenge, provides metrics based on chapter downloads as opposed to book downloads as the other sources do. Something else to notice as we get into other views here is that there's lots of information here, geographic information about where users are, countries where users are. However, this view is coming only from the JSTOR data. So there's this sort of movement as you move throughout the dashboard, and it can be tricky. You have to be really careful to be aware of where am I looking at sort of a summary of all of the usage data we have, as opposed to where am I looking at only a slice of it coming from one platform or another platform. So lots to dig into here. This is still being polished and refined, and we're really looking forward to putting it out in the world. But our topic is about decision making. So what is it that we're going to do with this? Why are we hoping to have it? I mentioned at the beginning of this talk that the University of Michigan Press is really actively moving toward trying to make more of its works open access. And this is going to be a big part of that story, having a really publicly available way of sharing who's using the books, what difference they make, how they're reaching audiences around the world is going to be core to positioning ourselves and the press to succeed in this mission of making more of our works open access. And then also translating these into meaningful stories. How do we take these numbers of downloads and tell the story of an author or a subject or a class or coursework, something really concrete and real that we can learn from seeing who's engaging with these works. So I think that's sort of the arc that I have for University of Michigan Press right now, going from sort of really homegrown experimentations with usage data that was interesting, but we knew really incomplete, to trying to get to something much closer to a complete picture that's going to be really, really fundamental to how we position our press going forward. I think over to you, Niels. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Rebecca. And I'll share my screen here. Okay. So, welcome everyone. I'm Niels Stern. I'm director of OAPEN Foundation, and I'll sort of expand on what Rebecca already told. So seeing this project from a publication platform point of view. So I'm going to share with you just a few insights into the way we have been piloting the open access books usage data dashboard project and reflect on how that can meet library needs. So as already mentioned, it's part of the OAEBU Data Trust Project, and Lucy Montgomery and Cameron Nealon have been the co-principal investigators focusing on the dashboard services, and we are part of the pilot partners together with University of Michigan Publishing and the others that you can see here. Just a few words on OAPEN. We provide infrastructures to enable open access to scholarly books. Our mission is to increase the discoverability of open access books and to build trust around them. And we do that by providing 3 services: the OAPEN library, the directory of open access books, and the OA Books Toolkit. I'll just say a few words about the OAPEN library because that's most relevant to this presentation and the project. So the OAPEN library was originally built as a project by a few European university presses back in 2007-8, and then turned into a non-profit foundation in 2010, opening up to many more publishers. So today we have over 18,000 peer-reviewed open access books and chapters from over 370 publishers of all kinds, from the scholar-led university presses to the commercial big ones. We have many languages on the platform, and as a publication platform, we host, we distribute, and we make sure of preservation too. It's all sitting on the DSpace open source platform, which makes it easy to integrate with library catalogs, and using a variety of feeds, and also harvesting and through the API. And we've seen a quite significant increase of downloads from around 5 million last year, and already above 8 million as of September this year. In the background, just a few words on this output chart. So you can see that when we get the books into the OAPEN library and share them with also the OAB, where we have many more titles registered, around 44,000 currently. We push this beta data in a variety of formats through the library and the intermediary system. So, for instance, through the intermediaries like OCLC, Exlibris, EBSCO, and so on, out to libraries, but also through Google Scholar and OpenAIRE Base and other initiatives, but also directly into the libraries. And we know that more than 1,100 libraries are actually using the platform. Now, just a few words on the prototype dashboard for OAPEN, which is developed by the team at Curtin University in Australia. And I'll share with you just a few slides. They are quite similar to what you saw Rebecca presenting. But just, for instance, this one, which I think is quite nice, it gives us a very nice overview of the usage. And when you're in the Kibana platform, you can mouse over and you can get more details, but also see this word cloud of titles that have been most downloaded. And you can then get specific title information about each of these titles. Furthermore, also the distribution geographically, which is of course really interesting to see how all the books on the platform are being downloaded, where they're being downloaded, and as you can see, it's really covering the whole of the world, and actually including Antarctica. I just realized. And then also the reference overview, which I think is very useful. We can see how much reference is coming from Wikipedia and Twitter, how important these channels are for the books. And we can also, on a title by title basis, see how they have been referenced. Now, all of this is in our view, holds a lot of potential, OA book analytics, to help inform collection and curation decisions. And I mean, we want to know more, of course, also about what kind of usage we see at the institutional level, which could be captured through IP addresses, of course, but also at the country level and the city level, and also where the books by authors at any given institutions are being read. So there's quite a lot of potential as we see it. Also, as Rebecca mentioned, it really helps us communicate the value and impact of open access to the faculty, to authors, but also to those who take decisions on budgets. And of course, we can communicate also more to students about learning and studying remotely, which is of course very relevant in these days of pandemic. There are challenges that we see. We have all our data is coming from collaboration that we have with IROS UK. So it's all counter-based data that we provide and have provided as input to this project. But we now, with this dashboard, we need to sort of have it available at the institutional level, and that we see as something ahead of us, which is a work in progress. And of course, there's also the importance of working with library communities to develop approaches to usage data that are open, transparent, and trusted. So I want to end my part of this presentation with a question. And the question is, what kind of usage data or metrics that you would like to inform your decisions on how to support open book publishing and the infrastructures supporting them? And I asked this question, of course, because it's very relevant to how we, as a publication platform, can help libraries and publishers, but also from my background as a publisher myself, but also with some years in a library, I think these questions have always been, and especially recently, been very important to reflect on. So what kind of data will support or will inform your decisions around open access books, as opposed to the kind of data that have informed decisions around purchasing or licensing books? So I think this is some of the questions I'd like to raise to you. With this, thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thank you, Niels and Becky. So our colleague Christina Drummond has joined you in the room, I hear. She's on the side. And so, as I mentioned before, would be available to talk in person with anyone who's there, wants to discuss our project more. She's our program officer, sort of a central node in this 2-year grant effort that we told you about. But again, we do want to have a broader discussion here. And I think actually Niels' prompt is a great, might be a good way to get that discussion going. And of course, we also have a few questions that have been brought up in the chat here on Pathable. So we could actually begin with that. So Christina Mezuk asks Becky, in this new tool, is it being tracked whether a book that was downloaded as a full book PDF and EPUB or other?
It's a great question. I am reopening up the dashboard right now to check. It would depend on which version was, hosted on a particular platform. I think it is just counting. Yeah, it's counting number of downloads associated with a particular title. We do not have it broken out right now by format, but we've done so much talking about bringing together ISBNs of different formats under the same title, and I can't quite remember where it's sitting right now. So it's a good question. Right now, the display is showing things under titles. I would have to look into it. The information should exist. It is really just a matter of what, how to group it and how to show it on the dashboard, I think.
Good, and Christina thanked you in the chat here, said she was just curious. And so then Devika McWalters asked, does anyone have ideas for measuring the impact of your OA books? So yeah, I think there's a lot we could actually potentially say about this. I think we were approaching that in a bit in some of our presentations. Do you want to say more on that, Becky and Niels?
I just, actually refer perhaps to the OAPEN OA Books Toolkit, which gives a few examples of the kind of impact you can get from actually opening up your books. I can share a link afterwards in the chat, but just perhaps refer to one survey which Springer Nature did a few years ago on their books, comparing open access books to non-open access books, and they did see a significant citation advantage. I think it was up with 50%, and they saw books being downloaded I think 7 times as much. It's also in the toolkit. So there's definitely a huge advantage in making your books open access in terms of outreach. And the original idea of building the OAPEN platform was, as a university press, we saw that we really struggled with first selling books in print, then selling books in and then actually getting books out there. So it was really about increasing distribution and dissemination, and we've seen that actually happening, and quite a lot of studies support this. But I'll share a link.
I would echo what Niels has said. I know the U of M Press has seen, a similar thing, just orders of magnitude greater of downloads for books that are open on a platform like JSTOR versus not open. But I think there's also a really interesting question to be asked, or that we can consider when we think about individual books and what we want to know about them and why they matter. So what I mean is that impact doesn't mean just one thing for every book we publish, right? So if there's a book that introduces a topic in a way that is really accessible and useful for undergraduates, and that's an open access book that can be used in courses, now we've made that course more affordable and more accessible for undergraduates. If there's a book that is a study of people living in a rural part of the world that is not very developed, and we can show that book is available to readers in that part of the world and they can make use of it, then we can say something about the difference that book made. There's all kinds of things we can say, I think, beyond greater citation, greater numbers of downloads, but they're a little bit more qualitative perhaps, and they really depend on the specific book and what story you want to tell about that book. That shapes what question you want to ask and what sort of metric you might look for.
I think that's really great. I mean, our project here has focused on pulling together different kinds of usage data, right? Downloads, online browsing, searching of parts versus the whole, other kind of web analytics. It's still all quantitative, but there's a lot of qualitative data as well. Some of those stories can kind of emerge from this richer analytics data, but then there's some of it here that's really quite individual that might only come out through something like, individual interviews and such. And so I did, we're kind of getting close to the topic of all the use cases here, how the different ways that people want to make use of usage data and the different use cases behind it, right? So, the different roles at a publisher, at a library, at a platform, the different types of employees who want different to make different uses. And in the chat in Pathable, Christina has provided some direct links to our write-up of all of these use cases that we have found here. And so then, did we miss? Let's see. So Josh McDonald, of course, did bring up some things about interested in finding out use, in the global South and otherwise in a global area here, which I think is certainly important. And for our project, certainly something we have been trying to find ways to fully engage with here. And then, yes. And Francis Pinter writes in the chat, sometimes the value of a book only becomes clear well after publication. How do we convince libraries and funders to take this into account? Yes, I mean, really one goal of our effort here is that by providing a richer understanding of data about past publications, publishers, funders, potentially others will be able to make more coherent stories, tell more coherent stories, and make more coherent arguments for funding of open access books in the future. And so being able to tell these stories about impact, through appropriate use of that usage data, we hope will help that and provide for more solid support of open access publishing in the future. So I think we have 5 more minutes in our allocated time. What other questions could we answer for you, or thoughts as this prompted?
We have a question coming from the conference center. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Hi, I was just Hannah Rosen from Lyrasis. I was just curious, how does the platform reconcile the different ways of measuring statistics? So if a book is on 5 different platforms and those 5 different platforms have 5 different ways of measuring downloads or investigations or whatever term you use, how does the usage data platform reconcile all of those into one output?
So, hi, Hannah. Nice to hear your voice. I think the answer is in some way it doesn't attempt to reconcile every single count into a single output, and that was actually sort of what we found. So in the slide that I was showing, you had your downloads from OAPEN, your downloads from Google Books, your downloads from JSTOR. In fact, what was really, really, really hard was even just reconciling all of the identifiers, getting the right list of books was way more challenging than you'd think it would be. Even just for, the University of Michigan Press with a few hundred open access monographs, sort of the first time we went into the prototype dashboard, it was like, there are X many products in here. And it was very clearly not the right number, and figuring out what had happened there, why there were so many more, and then there were so many less. And just even getting down to the appropriate list of titles from all of these different platforms, that reconciliation was hard enough. I think going into the project, there was a sort of like foggy idea, like, yeah, we can bring all the information into one pot and it'll just be like one sum total output of like how much engagement there's been with the book. And I think it became pretty evident quite quickly that actually that wasn't really valid or doable. And instead what we have is it is the counts from all the different sources presented sort of alongside of each other. So you still do have to look at these different things, but they're in one place. They're presented in a sort of consistent way. You don't have a spreadsheet in your email and a portal on a web browser, and you're writing to somebody else to ask them to produce something for you. Does that make sense? Did that answer the question?
It did. Thank you. We have one more question from Charleston. Give me one sec.
So one of the things I've been thinking about is how libraries make open access resources, open access books available, and how they choose to make those visible to their patrons. So whether or not they're activating those or making a collection of open access resources. So like for JSTOR, there's in many of the knowledge bases right now. So we're an ALMA user, and in ALMA, there's a JSTOR open access collection that you can activate, but also you could potentially go and download records and upload those into your catalog, depending upon how you want to make those available. And depending upon how you make those available, there's different ways of getting at the usage on those. So if you activate a collection in your knowledge base, you can theoretically pull some statistics on what links are being clicked on through your knowledge base. Like you could get some statistics out of your knowledge base to do that. But these kinds of statistics would cover all of those bases. So regardless of how you've opted to make the open access book available, a vendor provided or an open access publisher resource would clear up that, I guess, ambiguity for a library about how they're choosing to. So we can run some reports out of our catalog to look at what links are being clicked on or what collections are being used. It sounds like somebody wants to say something.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought you were about finished, and I was sort of anticipating how to answer this question.
I was honestly just rambling because I don't really have a question, more of just like, this has been something that's nagging on me, and it's kind of a research project. I'm really interested in how libraries are are making these available, and then how they're monitoring that usage to see, like, we've activated these collections, are they really worth our while?
Right. So you're right that a system, a discovery system, or a knowledge base or whatever, would able to give you reports on people who've clicked through, but it's only the users who've discovered that OA book through that system and used it through there. And if they found it through Google on their own, or had a saved link somewhere or whatever, and they access it on their own, you're not going to see any of that use. And so one of the aims with this project is to be capturing all of that use, especially because these books often live in multiple places, as in some of the examples we saw, so that now you've got the usage spread across multiple platforms, and someone interested in this book needs to bring it together. In the longer run here, though, we actually are interested in library provided data as well, right? So that sort of data about how many people came to it through a library system versus other channels actually does tell us some useful information. And in the longer run, we'd be interested in seeing such data contribute to the data trust as well. Niels, and then I would probably need to end the session.
Yeah, just to say that we're currently engaging with the Skelp Library Consortium to test some of these things on usage and how also the books get into are being presented through the library catalogs, and then pick up on the usage afterwards. And I hope we can report more on that perhaps next year at Charleston. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you to my co-panelists and to everyone who's participated and asked us questions. It's really great to see engagement in our work and interest in this topic. So have a great day, everyone.